Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Longshore 101. This is our first of our summer series of marine webinars. They'll be coming up about every 2 to 3 weeks. If you've signed up for this one, you will get an automatic invitation to the next one as soon as we publish the next date in there. If you need information more quickly than that, we have a library of some 22 webinars on our ligmarine.com website. Easy click onto there. You'll see a big button on the bottom left-hand corner for webinars, and it'll take you to all of those. There's no charge or registration for those. Just please go ahead and use those as you wish. We also include in most of those anyway, the PowerPoint. Should anybody need that information, as well as the video itself. Just a quick advert for our CMIP, our Certified Marine Insurance Professional Designation Program. Our next seminar is in Baltimore in October. You can get more information again on our ligmarine.com or on the iimis.org website, either way from there. All right, so Longshore 101. It's often a very easy thing to get into the weeds of longshore and forget some of the basic principles. I was meeting with a client and an agent this morning, and just going back through some of the very basic details so that the client really understood exactly where, in this particular case, subcontractors working for them were exposed to longshore or were not. So this is Charlie, and we have Charlie working in a warehouse or a shop or a manufacturing facility away from the waterfront, and he, of course, falls under the state workers' comp law. If we move him onto a dock or onto a vessel tied up to the dock, he transitions into longshore. He doesn't have to be on the vessel. He can be alongside the vessel on that dock. My illustration here has got a container ship, but it doesn't have to be anything of that size. It could be really any type of vessel, a barge, even a recreational vessel in many cases. If Charlie's standing on the dock and working on that dock, even building it, he's going to fall under longshore. I'm going to go back on each one of these in more detail later. This is just sort of the 10,000 foot view at this moment. If we move Charlie now onto that vessel and the vessel's sailing, again, don't get hung up with the container ship here. It could be any type of vessel. Then he's going to fall under MEL or crew P&I. And again, we'll define the difference between those two in just a moment. So Charlie literally could be in all three jurisdictions in one day's work. He could make a part for the vessel in the machine shop. He could bring it down to the dock and install it on the vessel, and then he could sail with the vessel to test that it's working properly. So one person could be in all three. More commonly, one person will be in a specific category, but we certainly can transition between the three. So let's have a closer look at each one of these in more depth. So here Charlie again is back on land. People like clericals, mariners, recreational boat repair. All of the various exclusions from longshore fall back into that state workers' comp. There are 8 exclusions from the Longshore Act. They're very detailed, and there is a longshore status webinar that goes through those exclusions in some detail on our website. The other one, which the people tend to forget, and we had this conversation again this morning with the agent and client, is on a landlocked body of water. So we have a body of water. It could be a lake. It could be it could even be a river if it's dammed at both ends. But if it's a landlocked body of water wholly within a single state, that takes him out of what they call the situs requirement of longshore. And again, much more detail of this in the CITES webinar on our website. But those recreational boat repairers are out of longshore now, have been since 2009. Mariners have been out for some 40 years now, since the 1984 acts. Clerical and sales type people have always been out. Let's look a little bit more at this recreational, particularly for some of our friends down here in South Florida, or those in the recreational market down in California, anywhere else in the country for that matter. There was a change in the Longshore Act in 2009, which was then set by rule in 2012, which changed the status of that box in yellow. But let me try and simplify this a little bit. If you only work on a recreational vessel under 65 foot, you're always going to be considered covered under the state workers' compensation program. If you only work on, even partially work on commercial vessels, you're always going to be considered longshore. That's the bottom row in my box here. What changed is if you repair or service a recreational vessel under 65 foot, up till 2009 and 2012 when the regulations were published, you were considered a longshoreman. Today, for the last 14 years now, you're under state workers' comp. But if you build, construct, or manufacture that same vessel, you're under longshore. It's a strange quirk in the law. It's somewhat strange to me because the state workers' comp, the repair service work, is probably higher hazard than the building work, yet we put it in the lower hazard, lower paid category of state workers' comp. But that's how the law's written. And I'm not here to tell you how I think it should apply. I have to tell you how it does apply. And that little box is a very simple way of getting that in your mind. What type of vessel they're working on, and are they repairing or servicing or build it, construct or manufacture it? Now Charlie's in the longshore. A longshore status is in a marine job. Does he have some connection to maritime employment? And again, we've got those 8 exclusions that go through that take different people out. And this was, again, a big topic of the conversation that we had this morning. Is a job marine? We were talking about a park with some docks that were being refurbished. And the people who are replacing, let's say, the swings in the park or a pathway that doesn't have anything to do with the waterfront, even though the park is on the waterfront, is not considered in a marine job. So you don't even have to go to the exclusions for those people. Flip side of the coin, the people that were building and repairing the boat ramp, that is definitely a marine job, and they are most definitely longshore. And again, did the accident happen on navigable waters of the United States? It's interesting. Navigable waters means different things to different people. US Coast Guard, for example, have a navigable water test, which is so much depth for for different types of vessels. But for the longshore, it is, can I get directly or indirectly to the Gulf, to the ocean, or to another state? So it could be a landlocked lake on the border of 2 states. Even if it's landlocked, it's navigable waters because you can go from state to state. Lake Tahoe is probably the best example of that one. Obviously, you can go from California to Nevada on there. Navigable waters, United States. It could be connecting. So Lake Okeechobee in Central Florida connects through the intercoastal waterway out to both the Gulf and to the ocean, ultimately. So that is navigable waters, United States. Doesn't have to be directly connecting. It could be indirect. But if you're just working in the little lake on your local golf course, and your golf course doesn't happen to straddle the border of a state, you're safe. That is, you become a State Act employee in that case. MEL or P&I or crew P&I. Commercial P&I policies automatically include crew unless you exclude them. So if we own or operate a vessel, we're going to have a P&I, protection and indemnity policy for that vessel. Or for a fleet of vessels, we'll have a whole schedule of them. And crew is covered automatically in there, again, unless the underwriter excludes it. Most recreational vessel policies exclude crew. They are all manuscripted, so there's no real common element there. There are a few that do include crew, but you really got to go with the assumption it's excluded. So if I want any crew coverage on my 110-foot motor yacht, then I'm probably going to have to add that by endorsement. MEL, or Maritime Employers Liability, is really where we put our people on other vessels. This could be caterers on, let's say, a dinner cruise vessel. This could be, you see it a lot in the oil patch business where we're going to go put our people on floating or semi-submersible rigs. That follows the person. It doesn't care what vessel they're on. One of the dangers with crew P&I is the vessel has to be scheduled for coverage. That sounds like pretty obvious. You're going to have to schedule every vessel. But a lot of people go, oh, I've got these 10 vessels and 2 of them are only worth $5,000 or $10,000. They're only barges or something very innocuous, a little John boat. I don't need to insure those $5,000 or $10,000 vessels. And consequently, they miss the P&I on there. Way to overcome that is to list that vessel. You could put a 0 value on it for the hull, but still list it for the P&I, and that gives you triggers the crew coverage on that vessel. Easy mistake to make is to say, yeah, I'm going to save a few dollars. I'm going to take off this vessel off this schedule, but I'm still going to use it. You're losing that P&I coverage in the same way. So watch out for that. So why do we care about all this categorization? Well, if you take a state workers' comp claim that may be $100,000 and we turn it into a Longshore claim, that claim will more than double on average countrywide. Now, you might ask, why is it different from state to state? Isn't the Longshore Act the same? Yeah, the Longshore Act's the same, but where the difference falls is the state workers' comp. In some states, Connecticut is one of the best example. The benefit differences between Connecticut workers' comp and Longshore are fairly small. So that same state workers' comp that might be $100,000 in Maryland could be $200,000 in Connecticut. Longshore, that $250,000 is probably about the same level, regardless of where you are in the country. There are a few nuances, particularly in California. If we go to that same claim and we make Charlie now that Admiralty employee, he's sailing on board that vessel. He could be running the crane on a crane barge. He could be doing anything. It doesn't have to be, again, that container ship. We could double that claim again. And the scary part about that is that when we get to Admiralty, the attorneys, the plaintiff attorneys, work on a contingent fee. Most commonly, 30 to 35%, even 40%. We've seen one case of 50% out there. But the attorneys are getting rich from these large Admiralty claims and are pushing for them very heavily in there. That little photograph at the bottom of this slide is actually a bench at a bus stop down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And it's called Injured on a Ship, Yacht or Dock. Call so-and-so Law Center. This is the type of ads you're seeing. Obviously, there's a lot of online ads today. Billboards, if you drive south down out of Houston, there's billboards all the way down the roads there showing you Admiralty attorneys. There's one out there that's even 1-800-SEASICK. I guess I don't know if they're still operating, but they've been operating for many years as a referral line for crew claims. The big ticket items. One of the reasons, just as an aside, that Longshore is so big is it provides lifetime benefits, not just till retirement age, not just till a couple of years beyond retirement age, but lifetime. And that can be a serious number today. You need status and you need situs. Status is the type of job I'm in. Situs is where did the accident happen. Again, we have webinars on both these two if you want to go look at them at some point to really define them much more detail than we're going to do today. But what I really want to emphasize here is the fact that both of them are necessary for eligibility. If you process in your brain the situs test, for example, and go, this person is not in navigable waters of the United States or in that landlocked lake. They're working in that golf course pond. that will immediately eliminate them. You don't even have to go and do the status test. If you eliminate them because status, they're not in maritime employment or they're in one of the excluded classes like mariners, then you don't need to go do the status test. You don't care. You have to have both be true. I will tell you that personally, I find the status test easier, so I tend to do that one first. But where it goes wrong is where you try and blend the two tests together. If you try and think of status and situs at one time, you may well come up with the wrong answer. If you go and do one of these, again, I don't mind which one you do first, one of these first, then move on to the second, you're going to get a better result. I forgot to mention, by the way, we do have a Q&A section on there. It should be somewhere about top middle, slightly to the right of your screen. If you've got questions, pop them in there, and I'll do my best to answer them when we conclude in a minute or two. Longshore has more teeth than just about any other act of workers' comp or any other insurance, really. It has if you do not knowingly cover Longshore, you can have up to a $10,000 fine, or by imprisonment for not more than 1 year, or by both. I will tell you, I've never seen the Longshore Department of Federal Department of Labor apply for jail time, but it's there. And $10,000 is per claimant. So that's a pretty nasty set of benefits. Even worse than this is the President, Secretary, and Treasurer can be severally liable for the fine or imprisonment and personally liable for compensation. And this isn't going to happen for, a broken finger or something like this. This is going to be the major claim. Without Longshore, they can pierce the corporate veil and not only collect all those Longshore benefits from the corporation, but also the President, Secretary, and Treasurer of that corporation personally. And then they lose the sole remedy of Longshore. And that allows them not only to collect all those Longshore benefits, but to sue on top of these. Many states have a stop work law. They say, if you can't prove you have workers' compensation force when we come and asking, then we can stop you working. Longshore is completely the reverse. It has no stop work law. It happens only when a claim occurs. So you don't have a bunch of people patrolling this out there to close work businesses down. It's a post-claim event. And really the flip of most state workers' comp on then. Again, if you've got questions on this, do pop them in the Q&A section. We'll answer those in just a minute. Whoop. Sorry, slight technical there. Let's look at the Admiralty section now. So there was a case called Willander that really set up the whole Admiralty status test. And the test becomes the worker must have an employment related to connection to a vessel in navigation and must contribute to the function of the vessel or to the accomplishment of its mission. So step one is I have to get some sort of remuneration out of the vessel or out of my work when I'm on a vessel in navigation. Not just dockside. Dockside would not count on its own way, but if that vessel doesn't have to be moving, but it has to be away from its home dock. And I mentioned the word remuneration rather than employment or even payroll there, because it could be something as simple as a workaway voyage. If I go down to the local port and I want to go get a trip down to, I don't know, the Cayman Islands, and I can find a vessel sailing down to the Cayman Islands, I could work my passage and they might allow me to go aboard and just work that passage in turn for getting the trip down there. And that's enough to create an employment rated connection. It's not very frequent, but it is there. They don't have to be paid by the vessel. They can be paid by anybody. Must contribute to the function of the vessel or the accomplishment of the mission. If you think of the cruise ship, the function of that vessel is to entertain you, to feed you, to make you lose money in the casino. All of the people that are contributing to the function of the vessel or the accomplishment of its mission go there. Similarly, you've got a crane barge out there, and somebody who is operating the crane, the vessel, the function of that vessel is to lift something. It could be to dredge, it could be to lift something in place like a pile and then drive it down. But here's really the biggest thing that will land us at. There's no employment relationship to the owner required for status. So again, I put my people on somebody else's vessel. That qualifies them. If they hit those first two triggers, that qualifies them under Admiralty. Clearly, the person that pays the benefits at first is their employer. Could the employer potentially sue the vessel if they don't own the vessel? Yes, if there was something dangerous on the vessel. But the first port of call goes back to the employer. That's always the case in workers' comp, Longshore, or Admiralty. Whoop, two slides there. Sorry about that. So what are the ways to ensure Admiralty? Obviously, workers' comp, we do workers' comp policy. Longshore, we add a Longshore endorsement or write a Longshore monoline. But for Admiralty exposures, we really have three different methods of covering it. Maritime employers liability by endorsing it onto the workers' comp policy. It's a limited coverage, but it is quite good in certain circumstances. Maritime employers liability monoline. This is really good for the harder risks or the risks that are traveling outside of the United States. But both those first two, again, are for people that are employed by people other than the vessel owner. Those cruise ship employees are usually not employed by the cruise ship, but by somebody else who are subcontracted on there. They're called concessionaires in the cruise world, but it's the same thing as being a subcontractor. Our P&I, our protection and indemnity there, is for the vessel owner. And again, we have to schedule the vessel to get coverage for the vessel owner. Few reference points for you. Again, I didn't put the LIG Marine website up here, but again, you've got a lot of reference on there, particularly the webinars on there and some future seminars we've got coming up. We sponsor a site called the Longshore Toolbox that again has a lot of research information in there. It even has a little checklist type of a product in there that you can go through called the Longshore Factor, and that'll walk you through any particular scenario you have and tell you, in the opinion of that little toolbox, is that a longshore exposure, is that a state act exposure, an Admiralty exposure, or combination of the three, any combination of the three. It's not specific. Unfortunately, we couldn't load all the navigable waters of the United States on there. So one of the questions is, are they doing this work on the navigable waters? You've got to work that one out first. But it does work you through the CITES test in a lot of detail. Our blog at blog.ligmarine.com, Longshore blog, posts a lot of news articles, current commentary, case law, anything really that's going on in the longshore insurance world, and we stray into Admiralty as well in there. The Longshore Act in here, we've just put down as a searchable version of the Act. So if you need to go find something in there, it's a nice, easy way to do that. Then the last one is the Department of Labor location for longshore carriers. Frankly, that link's so long, I always just type in approved longshore carriers into a search engine and it pops back. But that's worth checking if you're trying to write a new piece of business, take it over from a carrier. Are they even allowed to write longshore? May sound like an obvious question, but many carriers don't know that they're allowed to write longshore. So that list can be very valuable. It's also very valuable if you've got a subcontractor coming in and giving you a certificate of insurance for one of your clients. You can check if that's legitimate longshore insurance by making sure that that carrier is on that list. All right, so here we're back with Charlie again. State workers' comp in the warehouse, in the shop, away from the water's edge. We bring dockside, and he suddenly becomes longshore, whether he's on that dock or working on the vessel alongside that. and then we take him, pop him up on the vessel that's away from the dock, and he gets MEL if he's employed by somebody else. He gets crew P&I if he's employed by the vessel owner. Just to reiterate, my graphics here are container ships, but they do not need to be anything like that size. There's cases right down to John boats. There's even a case for a professional surfing instructor that a surfboard is a vessel. So that's how drastic it can be on there. So that's the end of the presentations. Again, for those of you who joined a little bit late, please go ahead, type any questions you have in the Q&A box. Should be just about top center, maybe a little bit to the right of center on your screen. This again will be this is part of our summer series of webinars, run about every 2 weeks, and we'll post those. If you've already registered for this one, then you will get an invitation to the next one. No questions today, boy. They're trying to make it easy on me, Jim.
There is a couple under the comments on the questions that I posted.
Okay. For some reason, I'm not seeing the questions. Could you read them to me? Would you mind? Thank you.
Yes, this first one's from Paxton. Which jurisdiction would cover a claim for a railroad employee of a company who has track inside of a port or terminal? They also have FELA coverage. The railroad employee's job is to transload the cargo to port or terminal operator.
We've got a railroad employee inside a port, working inside of a port. If they're a railroad employee, they fall under FELA, so they've got the coverage in force there. FELA benefits are similar to Longshore, so there's not a great likelihood they try and jump into Longshore. But nevertheless, we can't tell a employee how to bring the claim. So because of that part of loading and unloading, I don't want to have a Longshore policy enforced just at least on an if any basis, or even better would be if I can find somebody who would write the Longshore and the FELA together. It's an interesting one. If it's the port employee or the terminal's employee, they are definitely Longshore. But the fact this one's a railroad employee makes it a little bit more nuanced. Another one, Jim?
Where can people get the slide deck after the presentation?
Okay, we will be posting this on the webinar probably in about a week, maybe a little bit later. We'll put the slide deck up and the recording of the webinar. All right. Well, again, thank you, everybody. We appreciate everybody being with us this Thursday afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.